Aloha, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this joint committee with the Committees on Energy and Intergovernmental Affairs and our good friends from the Committee on Water, Land, and the Arts on this March 19th at 3 o'clock in room 224. This hearing is being streamed live on YouTube. If there's any kind of catastrophic ending to it, we will bring you up to speed with a public notice as to when we will reconvene. We ask that everyone limit their testimony to 1 minute. First on our agenda is HB 1619 HD2 relating to electric vehicle infrastructure. First on our testifiers list is Johnny Tumor or someone from the PUC. Thank you, Ashley. That's all I have for those indicating a desire to testify. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify on 1619? If not, members, any questions for Ashley from the PUC? If not, we're going to, the next one's mine as well. The next measure is 1728 HD1 relating to rainwater catchment systems. On our testifiers list for this measure is Lee Wang from the Housing Hawaii's Future. Okay, members, he submitted testimony in support. Ted Kavalis from the Grassroots Institute.
Aloha, Chair. We will stand on our written testimony in support.
Great, thank you, Ted. That's all I have for those who have indicated desire to testify. Is there anyone else in the room that wants to testify on 1728? If not, members, any questions for Mr. Kavalis? Okay, we will move on to the next measure, which is my illustrious co-chair is in charge of.
Thanks. Moving on to HB 1844, relating to Land Use Commission, which, except for important ag lands, requires LUC to reclassify lands that are designated for urban growth and makes other conforming amendments. Testifying first on 1844 is the Land Use Commission.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, and our officer for the Land Use Commission.
Thank you. Signed up to testify next is Housing Hawaii's Future. In support, NIOP, NAIOP, Hawaii Farm Bureau. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chair, members of the committees. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony providing comments. We have concerns with this measure. We support affordable housing. We know it's needed, but not at the expense of agriculture. This bill seemingly just bypasses LUC and requires LUC to reclassify based on the county general plan or county development plan. Again, we support affordable housing, but not at the expense of agriculture. We have so many agricultural goals. Doubling food production, farm to school, our regional kitchens, our farm to state program. Why are we considering reducing productive agricultural lands or agricultural lands in general? So again, we have some real concerns with this measure, along with the other measures that are proposing to remove ag land out of ag for housing. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Testifying next is the Sierra Club. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. Wayne Tanaka with Sierra Club of Hawaii. We are in opposition to this measure, for a number of reasons that the previous testifier pointed out. These county general plans 20 years ago might have been formed a very different, understanding of of water availability, of food security needs, of food security opportunities, and so just to force the Land Use Commission to urbanize these lands based on on these old county plans that did not necessarily account for the things that the Land Use Commission is tasked with thinking about, could result in a lot of negative unintended impacts to our long-term resilience. I do want to again reiterate that the Land Use Commission has already approved tens of thousands of units that have not been built. And so really, if the desire is to encourage a production of housing, we should maybe look at giving the Land Use Commission enforcement tools to encourage those units, developers to follow through on their development commitments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Signed up to testify next is the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii.
Aloha, chairs, vice chairs, committee members. Will stand on our written testimony in support of this bill.
Thank you. That is everyone who had signed up to testify on HB 1844. We have a number of other written testimonies, say mostly in opposition. Is there anyone else here in the room with us wishing to testify this afternoon? Seeing none, are there questions? Senator Richards.
Ted, if I could ask you to come up, please. Real quick, in support. I get the part of housing, but you've heard the pushback from agriculture. What is the solution there?
Sure, I certainly appreciate that question, Senator. And just for the record, Ted Kafalis with Grassroot Institute. I think it's important, I guess in the bill, I believe there's protections for the rural and agricultural areas. It specifies that the process would only apply to the areas that the counties have already identified for urban development. So it wouldn't just necessarily be a skipping of the LUC necessarily. This is already land, excuse me, that the counties have at least identified as where they want future growth to happen.
Okay, all right. Follow up? Brian? I'm not trying to have a counterpoint on this conversation, but just getting the opposing sides. So you heard what Ted has talked about. We run into this, and I'm on the side of agriculture when it comes to this, but we struggle with this. What's your thoughts on this, Brian?
Thank you, Senator. Brian Miyamoto, on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. And there are an exemption in here, and it may seem like it protects ag. IL is not included. IL, I think, is roughly maybe 140,000 acres. We still have another 800,000 or so acres of agricultural land. So although lands may not be designated IL, they still have high agricultural value. And again, we understand these aren't plans, we understand the need for affordable housing, but why are we, again, looking at agriculture? Agriculture seems to be the only lands available for everything. Affordable housing, renewable energy, landfills. If we really want to support agriculture, we need to preserve land, so there needs to be guardrails if this is going to be considered. Again, ag land is always under tension for competing uses. IL is included. IL is not the only quality lands that we have out there. So again, there are some protections, but we are always hesitant whenever we're looking at converting ag land out of agriculture. How do we produce the food, feed, fiber, fuel, and floriculture that we all want with less and less land?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Question? LUC? Thank you. Are you aware of the four counties' position on this bill, because none have submitted testimony so far in support of the bill?
I haven't had, excuse me, thank you, Senator DeCoy. Dan Ardanker, Executive Officer from the Land Use Commission. I have no knowledge. They have not communicated with me with regard to it. But the fact that they don't support it, I think, is kind of telling.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Other questions? Oh, Senator Favela.
No, that's you, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just a little bit, you said earlier about what the counties had designated as the urban core. What part of the island do you live?
I live like in Ala Moana area.
So you know where I live? That's the urban core of the designation for the new city. You know how much of that was agriculture?
Most of it,
All of it.
yeah.
Okay, so again, went to the Land Use Commission, and of course, we need progress. But again, like how Brian said, it's always again coming after the ag land to feed the appetite of affordable housing. And we use that as a token, affordable housing for the less fortunate and all that. But really, who's making it into those homes? Ocean Point, going for $3.5 million. But none of us in here can afford that. How much of that is helping the actual problem of housing? None. But we're going to go against, again, after the farmland and putting a Band-Aid on what we really need to do. So before we start doing this and saying, oh, because a city had already designated this area, if I was born 30, 40 years ago, things would have been different. I don't care if the city had designated urban core, because we lost all of that prime land to development. One of them is the largest, was Gentry. It took out the biggest chunk of our agricultural nurseries and everything that we had. So again, there should be a decision that when are we going to stop the bleeding? That's what I would like to know. I mean, I don't think you have the answer, but the reason why I asked you that question is you got to go take a ride in the place that used to be called a country. Now it's a new city, yeah? Because it's no longer country because they took away all of our ag land. So we need to be careful when it comes to housing and saying that we're going to do affordable housing and try to curb that appetite. It's not going to happen. We're going to go into we don't have any farmland. So that's my spiel. Sorry, Chair.
I certainly appreciate that, Senator.
Thank you, brother.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, everybody. Let's move on to the next measure on the agenda, HB 1990, relating to residential real property, which establishes penalties, fines, and liens for an owner of a residential property who fails to remediate zoning violations and makes other amendments. And testifying first is the Hawaii Association of Realtors.
Thank you, Chair. We'll send our testimony.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Grassroots Institute.
We'll stand on our testimony, chairs, but just a quick note, we offered an amendment, Ted Kafalis with Grassroots Institute. I think the biggest thing for us is, we do oppose this, but it's not necessarily the foreclosure aspect of it. It's more that we want to make sure that the home is sold at fair market value and that any excess is returned back to the homeowner rather than just pocketed. So that's kind of our big hold up there. So appreciate the consideration. Mahalo.
Thank you. That's everyone who had signed up to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1990? Seeing none, are there any questions? All right, seeing none, thanks. Let's move on to the next measure, HB 2424, relating to land use, which authorizes each county planning agency to petition the LUC for a district boundary amendment to reclassify certain lands within the ag district to the rural district for a period of time. Testifying first on SB 2424 is the LUC.
Chairs, members of the committee, we stand on our records.
Thank you. Up next is OPSD.
Chairs, members, OPSD will stand on written testimony and support, providing comment for proposal.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. Hawaii Farm Bill will stand on written testimony, providing comment, same argument.
Thank you. That is everybody who had signed up to testify on 2424. We had a few other written comments. Is there anyone else here in the room wishing to testify on this measure? All right, seeing none, are there questions? Senator DeQuaid.
Thank you, Chair. OPSD. Thank you. So, except for Hawaii County, Hawaii County Council member, none of the counties have weighed in on this bill. Are you aware of their positions on the bill?
I do not. Sorry, Leo Sanchez, Administrator with OPSD. No, Senator, I am not aware of their positions, of the counties themselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? Just real quick for the LUC. In your testimony, you note there's a declaratory ruling process that would be used hypothetically under similar circumstances for reclassification. Is there a tweak to this that would provide for the same kind of, evaluation?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Dan Hardanker, Executive Officer for the Land Use Commission. This is problematic. I think that the declaratory ruling process is definitely the wrong process. At the very least, the special permit process could be utilized. However, that really doesn't lend itself to this either. The only process that we have, other process that we have available to us is the contested case hearing process. And that would be the most palatable from a legal standpoint rather than a declaratory ruling process, because at some stage, there has to be, in order to meet due process, there has to be a contested case hearing, and there has to be an ability for affected landowners to present their case.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there's no further questions?
We're going to take a brief recess prior to taking the vote. We are reconvening our joint committee with the Committee on Energy and Intergovernmental Affairs and our Committee on Water and Land and Culture and the Arts. The two chairs have conferred and have decided to move these measures forward. First one being 1619 HD2 relating to electric vehicle infrastructure. We do want to pass this measure out as is to help with the deployment of more EV charging stations throughout our state. So the recommendation is to pass it as is. Any discussion? If not, Senator Chang, I vote yes.
Chair's recommendation for House Bill 1619 is to pass unamended. Chair votes yes, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator DeCoite,
Reservations.
Senator Richards,
Reservations?
Senator Favela,
Reservations.
recommendation is adopted.
Thanks for the Committee on Water, Land, same recommendation.
For the Committee of Water and Land, voting on HB 1619 HD2, Chair's recommendation is to pass unamended. Chair goes aye. Vice Chair excuse, Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator Lamasal. And I go aye. Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you.
Okay, the next measure is House Bill 1728 relating to rainwater catchment systems. We would like to create a kind of a regulatory regime around this this opportunity, but think that it's probably better to have the Department of Health be designated as that kind of regulator for this measure. Also want to make a second amendment, which is to take into account the amendments by, okay, this is a long name for an organization. It's called the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials and the American Rainwater Catchment System Association International. Those two entities have given us suggested amendments to help clarify the standards that are wanting to be achieved with this measure. So those are the two substantive amendments. Any discussion? If not, Senator Chang, I vote yes.
Chair's recommendation for HB 1728 is to pass with amendments, noting all members present. Are there any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on. Oh, sorry. Water, Land Committee, same recommendation.
Same recommendation, Committee on Water and Land and Cultural Arts. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair goes aye. Vice Chair excuse, Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator Lamasal. Senator DeCourt, aye. Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 1844 relating to the Land Use Commission. Appreciate the discussion and questions from some of our colleagues. It sounds like there's not the support at this time to move it forward. So we're going to defer this measure. There are other measures moving in this space, so perhaps we'll come back to continuing the conversation. But for the moment, let's move on to HB 1990 relating to residential real property, which establishes penalties and fines and liens. Recommendation, I'd like to seek committee's indulgence to move this along. This goes to a couple more committees, but passing with amendments, adopting the recommendations of the, or addressing the recommendations of the Grassroots Institute, so that if there's a property owner who fails to comply with whatever the zoning is and all that stuff, yes, the city can take action, but we're going to change this to read, provided that the county sell the property at no less than the market value of similar properties and that revenues received from the sale that exceed the amount of any liens, penalties, and costs to the county for related actions be refunded to the property owner. And we'll keep the defective date on the measure. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Okay, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments HB 1990 HD2. Chair goes aye, noting the excused absence of Vice Chair Inoue. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your measure is adopted.
For members of EIG, same recommendation. Any discussion? If not, Senator Chang, I vote yes.
Chair's recommendation for HB 1990 is to pass with amendments, noting the presence of all members. Are there any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 2424 relating to land use. This one as well, I'd like to recommend moving with amendments, but to address some of the issues raised, we'd like to adopt OPSD's language allowing time for conformance. And also, I think to the point, I forget which testifier raised it, about there being 45,000 or 50,000 unbuilt units that have been previously approved by the LUC, where the landowners did not follow through and actually build the housing. I'd like to add in reasonable LUC authority to impose penalties for non-compliance. Note, this also has an effective date of 3,000. We'll keep in there for further discussion. Any questions, comments?
Chair, I still have an issue with this, knowing that, the other counties aren't even weighing in on it, is sending me a message that, they're not in support of it. So I'll be honest, I don't see, Maui County on there, and for that reason, I'm gonna go no on this measure.
Understood. Any further comments? If not, Vice Chair.
Committee on Water and Land, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments HB 2424 HD2, with the chair going aye, noting the excused absence of Vice Chair Inoue. Any members voting with reservations? Any no votes? Chair, your motion has been adopted.
Thanks.
For EIG, same recommendation. Any discussion?
Chair.
Yes, Senator Richard.
I know Big Island weighed in on this, but I'm concerned that we don't have all the counties weighing in on that. So for that reason, I'm going to be voting no on this.
Okay, it's going to be close. Okay, Chair's recommendation still to pass this measure with the suggested amendments by our WLA Chair. I vote yes.
Chair's recommendation for HB 2424 is to pass with amendments. Chair votes yes, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator DeCoite?
No.
Senator Richards?
No.
Senator Favela?
No.
Recommendation is not adopted.
All right, keeping it real, everybody. That is the end of our 3 p.m. agenda. I'll note we have one more joint agenda between the other committees, housing. So for the moment, I'd like to thank our illustrious EIG Chair.
Thank you. That was a really real committee hearing. Adjourned.
Good afternoon. We're reconvening our joint committees on energy and intergovernmental affairs, housing, and water, land, culture, and the arts on our 3:01 p.m. agenda here in State Capitol Conference Room 224. We have a few bills on the agenda. We'd ask folks to be succinct in your testimonies. We have time to get through everybody. Make sure your written testimony has been submitted. And with that, we'll begin with HB 1738 relating to land use decision-making, which authorizes counties to amend district boundaries, that's a different bill. District boundaries involving land areas greater than 15 but no more than 25 acres for the purposes of housing. Testifying first on 1738 is the Land Use Commission.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee here.
Thank you. Up next is OHA on Zoom.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committees. My name is Kamaili Pulo'ole Mitchell with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs stands on its comments for HB 1738 HD2. OHA appreciates the intent to facilitate housing production. However, this measure is not necessary to expedite affordable housing, and the Land Use Commission already processes these projects on the 45-day timeline. The LUC plays a critical role in ensuring that protection of agricultural lands, Native Hawaiian rights, and public trust resources through its transparent process that allows community and culture practitioner participation. So expanding the county authority over larger parcels risks weakening that consistency oversight. And also, OHA would like to emphasize that increasing supply alone does not guarantee affordability. So without these enforceable requirements, like the income targeting and long-term restrictions, these projects may not serve the most in need. We encourage further study through the working group before making structural changes to the LUC authority. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Testifying next is the Sierra Club. Good afternoon again.
Chairs, Vice Chairs of the Committee, Wayne Salaka with the Sierra Club of Hawaii. We are in opposition to this measure. I think as the previous testifier pointed out, the Land Use Commission already processes affordable housing district boundary amendments within the 45-day deadline. Like they've never missed that deadline. So you're really only shaving off a small fraction of the affordable housing development timelines. And again, given what we've seen over the years of tens of thousands of units not being developed despite being approved under district boundary amendments, I think this measure is kind of barking up the wrong tree if the intent really is to promote the production of affordable units. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I respectfully ask that you vote this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chair, members of the committees. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have our testimony. We respectfully oppose this measure. And we have the same concerns as previous measures. Once you convert ag land out of ag, it's never coming back. We're going to lose that production forever. Our concern is that we're increasing from 15 acres now to 25 acres, and it seems like a small ask. 10 additional acres. 10 acres can maybe produce 14, 15 houses. How much food production can we produce in those 10 acres? 100,000, 500,000 pounds of food a year? Depends on the crops. Again, whenever we convert land out of ag, we're going to lose ag production. In a time when we're trying to increase our ag production, why are we considering potentially losing more? Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you. Testifying next is the Grassroots Institute.
Aloha chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee, Ted Kavalas of Grassroots Institute will stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you. Hawaii Farmers Union on Zoom.
Chairs, vice chairs, committee members, Hunter Hevelin here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union. We submitted our written testimony offering support of the intent of this measure to increase affordable housing stock, but similar to the myriad concerns we add to the choir there, and would maybe like to zero in on one of the particular thresholds that's in place in the bill as written. It relies on the Land Study Bureau's productivity rating, which were first produced in the 1960s. And by matter of example, the Mililani Ag Park and the adjacent parcel are currently rated A and D. When the first measurement was done, they were both rated A. But when the second was done, the adjacent parcel, which is now a solar farm, was rated D because it was unirrigated and used in pineapple production. And in that way, our regulatory structures are currently still being based on mid-century economics that determine which crop you were going to produce. Relying on that to determine which lands we want to move out of the agricultural district is a misapplication of that tool, and one that further risks loss of our agricultural lands. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Let's see. That is everyone who has signed up to testify. We have another, I don't know, 6 pages of testimony, maybe like 50 or 60 individuals, both in support and opposition. Is there anyone else in the room here with us wishing to testify on HB 1738? Please come forward. Good afternoon.
Chairs, Vice Chairs, members of the committee, Riley here from the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity. We stand on our written testimony with comments.
Oh, I apologize. I must have missed. Oh, yeah, I see. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Anyone else? 1738, going once, going twice? Seeing none, are there any questions? Senator Ducoit.
Thank you, Chair. Office of Planning. So Leo, I believe you guys support this bill.
Yes, we do.
So as a support of the bill, are you guys aware of any of the counties that support the bill?
I do not.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Further questions on 1738? All right, seeing none. Let's move on to the next measure, HB 1739, relating to transit-oriented development, which requires the development of transit-supportive densities to be allowed in any county-designated TOD area, and prohibits the counties from enacting an ordinance, rule, regulation, development standards, zoning provision, or other land use control that restricts the development of transit-supportive densities. And testifying first on HB 1739 is, drum roll please, DOT. Online.
Not present on Zoom, Chair.
Thank you. OPSD. Thank you. And Grassroots Institute.
Aloha Chairs will stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you. That's, I believe, everybody who had signed up on 1739. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? Oh, please come forward. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? If not, questions on 1739? Just real quick for, I believe it was OPSD. Thanks.
Aloha, Chairs, Vice Chairs, members of the committee.
Thanks. In your testimony, you raised timing issues.
Yes.
If the effective date is pushed off and/or if there's adjustments to the various dates within the bill, providing for time to change admin rules and/or ordinance and that sort of thing. Is that the only concern you guys have? Does that resolve that?
Yes, our biggest concern was allowing the counties the time frame to adopt ordinances that would fall within this bill.
Okay. Thank you. And then real quick for a DPP, really same question. If there's adequate time for counties to take action on this, or at least for the city and county of Honolulu, is that sufficient for meeting some of the concerns you raised?
Hi, Chair. Again, Tim Strites with DPP. It's really, our concerns really deal with the details of this. So I believe we meet the intent of the definition, so that there's really three key parts which deal with the ministerial processing, the floor area ratio minimums, and then this part about no imposition of development standards that render it impracticable to build. And so our concerns are with how that would be affecting our current TOD framework. And so I mean, I could give some examples, a few concerns just to better illustrate to you if you'd like. But to get to your point about, or question about the time frame, I'm not sure what time frame was proposed.
I believe it was, I think a few years to take a look, to go through the process and so forth.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure.
Or we could make it any amount of time, really, right? So
Yeah.
is time an issue that can resolve most of the concerns you have, I guess, with the right time frame?
No, not really. Because this bill is really talking about something different from the structure of our current TOD framework.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other
Chair,
questions?
DPP?
Oh, Senator Favela.
I understand, we try to build, I guess, more homes like that. But my concern is that if we're gonna be bringing in certain homes or certain module, whatever the situation, to try to accommodate and getting more shelters. But my concern is that we're not cut shorting on the plumbing, electrical, those kinds of things, and making sure that we stay within the building code of the measure, because we had an issue with one of the projects in my community that the manufacturer was China, and when they came to put it together, had issues with plumbing and electrical, because it didn't fit the standards or the quality of what is for the Hawaii, trades and stuff like that to be covered. So when you guys looking at this, are you guys looking at that, making sure that these things are going to be checked, or we just worrying about sheltering people?
Well, I believe what you're referring to would be a separate process related to like the building permits and building code.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Senator Lamasal.
Thank you, Chair. For DPP, I have a question. So how does this law or bill, if passed, how does that interact with areas that have adopted a TOD plan?
So again, I think we comply with the intent, but really our concern is with the details. So for example, the city's allowable floor area is determined by zoning district, and within zoning districts, there's different intensities that are low, medium, high, as well as the permit type, whereas this bill is based on distance from a rail station. So it would appear that this would require an additional burden of calculating the distance each time and having different allowances for the same zoning district and permit. Another issue is with the permitting themselves. So director approval is allowed for certain permits, and that's dependent by the project activity and use, but the definitions requirement for ministerial processing may have some adverse impacts. So projects seeking the specified FAR, would that override the required permitting triggered by other components of the same project? And would the project seeking the specified FAR override our ability for conditions of approval, which not only mitigate the impact of increased floor area and height, but also specify the project's community benefits, which support livable communities in exchange for this increased FAR and height? And that was really, that community benefits portion was a fundamental part of the TOD plans that were community vetted, we negotiated with the community. And then the other one related to development standards is that, those not only ensure the pedestrian-oriented environment through design considerations, such as like where the building is placed on the property, but they're also intended to create these livable spaces and high-density development areas. So for example, like setbacks between building towers. And then they, of course, serve safety purposes for like fire containment and then air and light access and so forth. And so we're not quite sure like if this bill would, projects seeking the specified FAR would override these standards. So that's kind of the gist of our, where our concerns lie.
Got it. Thank you.
Further questions? Senator Chang, Chair Chang.
Thank you, Chair. Do you know how many parcels or what the general areas are in TOD zones that don't meet the transit supportive density standards in this bill?
Well, as it stands, where the TOD is established, which is 3 TOD neighborhoods right now, working on the 4th, there is the option to achieve the 7.0 FAR in all of those, but again, it depends on what the property is zoned as and the type of permit that would be required, or if they came in for that that level of FAR. So I don't know the number offhand, but it is possible in every.
Not by right, necessarily.
Not by right, it would be director. It could be director reviewed. There is one permit that is required to go to city council for approval. Those are like the high impact type of projects that seek the most, relaxations of the development standards and seek the highest types of additional height and density. That was determined as part of the TOD, establishing the TOD, that those would go before council just because of the potential impact those have on the community. But for the ones that the director approves, those would be just reviewed internally within the department, and then if they were seeking height or additional density, they would have to provide some sort of community benefit, because that is one of the major trade-offs that we worked out with the community through the TOD planning process in exchange for that additional development potential impacting the communities.
Well, you're assuming that the housing that's being built is bad for the community, which I would argue is
No.
a false premise. But you were also referring to these discretionary city council reviews of certain densities. We had an info briefing here where we were told actually that, and I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but the stadium would be an example of this, where the height limits were actually deliberately kept very low so that any redevelopment efforts would have to go back to the city council for raising those height limits. Is that correct?
Not, well, so the city's policy is to add any additional height that comes through the TOD zone change process as a bonus. And so in order to achieve the bonus, you would go through that discretionary review process, because again, it ties back to the community wanting to have something in return to mitigate that additional height and density. So we are separately working on a study to quantitatively allow for developers to come in, provide the bonuses without having to go through that same like case-by-case review in order to achieve that extra height and density. But the minute you give it up and just, like, I guess, rezone it without it counting as a bonus, you basically forfeit that right to get back again, because it's much harder to change the bonus or entitled height down back to a bonus than the other way around. But we are trying to make it streamlined for the developers.
But you earlier objected to my characterization of the housing as a benefit to the community, say those extra however many 10, 20 floors of housing. Can you explain, can you reconcile that with what you were just saying?
Well, just to be clear, housing is a benefit that we consider it a benefit to the community. So it's in all of our TOD plans as such. And I was just referring to the development impact itself, whether that's housing, commercial offices, so forth. But one of the benefits that the community can get is that above any requirement for affordable housing, they can provide additional affordable housing and count that towards their benefit that they would provide in exchange for any bonuses they get through the TOD program.
Thank you, Chair.
Further questions?
Yes, okay. And I'm sorry I was late, but we did have a transportation meeting earlier, committee, and I'm not sure if this question I'm going to raise was asked earlier. With several of the TOD areas that already has been made, like on the west side, Pearl City and other areas, and I understand most of the development in TOD is going to be managed by the city and county, is that correct?
We would review the permits.
Okay, on the permit side for development.
Yes.
Okay, the question I raise is, during the implementation of rail that I've been following since I've been here, there were some areas that the parking issue was deleted. I was there for the grand opening of the parking area for, I think it was IAEA or Pearl City, and was deleted from the development. So that means that whoever develops the area within that particular region is not going to have parking for those riding on the rail. Now, when it comes to the development on the permitting, so I guess it depends whether it's going to be condos or residential. So if it's residentials, then I would assume that on residentials will be allowed parking within the particular area if there's rezoning to, I'm not sure how many acres or square footage, if it's 10,000 feet of land area or 12. And I believe there's some areas that we have passed measures disallowing on-street parking. So how is that going to be addressed as you move along?
Well, so just to be clear, in all the TOD areas, we've removed the minimum parking requirement to encourage developers to provide less, because each stall, costs tens of thousands of dollars that gets passed on to the purchaser or renter. We don't require a maximum number. We really leave it up to the market, so whatever the developer determines, so they can provide parking. And then in addition to that, there's also city initiatives that are through the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation that is providing parking structures associated with the rail itself, as well as in conjunction with the Department of Transportation Services.
Okay, well, it doesn't seem like, I think probably parking is going to be an issue, but I guess we'll look forward, and I won't delay, the communications today, but eventually city and county, I think you're going to have parking as a problem going forward. But anyway, that's it, Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Senator Elefante.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Streitz.
Hello.
Yeah. So I don't know if this was answered previously before, and I'm sorry if I missed this. How many currently TOD zoning plans has the city and county of Honolulu currently enacted into law?
So all of our 8 TOD plans under the city jurisdiction outside of HCDA Kaka'ako are adopted, and we've implemented the zoning and established the special district recommendations in the Waipahu, Aiea, Pearl City, and Halava. And we're within weeks, hopefully, of submitting our proposal for the East Kapolei TOD neighborhood to our planning commission that then gets passed on to city council.
And as a follow-up, one last question I have, chairs. As a follow-up to that, DPP's interpretation of the bill is that this would limit the flexibility of all the hard work that goes into TOD area plans and some of the ones that have already been passed at the county level. Is that a correct assumption?
Correct, yes. We want to achieve the same goals. We just have a different structure than what this bill is proposing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Streitz. Thank you, chairs.
There's no further discussion. What do we move? Oh, let me turn it over to my better dressed, more illustrious chair.
Whoa, thank you. Wait, is that me? Is that me? House Bill, we're on to House Bill number 1742, HD3, relating to housing. On our testifiers list, we have the Department of Health. Thank you for joining us. Kika Bukowski from the Plumbers.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Chairs, Committee members. Kika Bukowski on behalf of the Plumbers and Fitters, Local 675. We submitted written testimony in opposition to this bill. We stand on our written testimony. However, we just like to highlight our concern. One of our concerns is that there are fundamental differences between the types of homes that are referenced in this bill versus modular homes. The main difference is that manufactured homes are to HUD standards, which are federal standards, which are not consistent with our local building code standards. And modular homes, which we've been working on, actually require local standards, local building codes. We are pursuing local construction. We think that we can help address the affordable or the housing situation utilizing local vendors with local modular, local constructed, local building codes. The bill would also, may also potentially frustrate a bill that was just passed on Maui, Bill 15, that was intended to address the Lahaina victims and getting them into their homes. So with that, we are available for questions.
Thank you, Kika. Ted Kafalis from the Grassroots Institute.
Aloha, chairs. Ted Kafalis, Grassroots Institute. Will stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you, Ted. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1742? Not members, any questions? Senator
I
Favela?
know I asked the question the wrong time, but I guess DPP? Tim, or DPP, but, oh, Tim. Thank you, Tim.
Yes.
Tim. Anyway. So you just heard what the plumber said. I guess I was talking to you about this bill that was coming up. But again, with these concerns, what would be the stance, your guys' stance as the Department of Planning and Permitting when it comes to what the plumber had just addressed and what I was saying about the building code being certain requirements with these coming in besides not being local?
Oh, I apologize, Senator, I'm not familiar with this bill. I was only coming to speak on the last one, but I can reach out to our
If
director.
you can, the only reason why I'm saying is with the Department of Planning and Permitting going to have to approve the planning and permitting for these structures, and if it's not up to building code, again, if you look in my district, one of the housing in my district wasn't up to building code because they brought it in, and there was delays on the project because the people that was going to live in them is low and moderate income, and it was going to cost them their lives not having the right building code. So because you guys are the building permitting people, I just wanted to know if this would be on you guys' radar to kind of be consistent in the sense of making sure that these homes are put together if it's not to the standard of what our statewide standard is and not the continent moving forward.
Okay, I can follow up if you'd
please.
like.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
Have someone reach out to your office.
Oh, Senator,
Quick question, plumbers union, please. So Kiko, why you believe this bill ignores the enforcement of local building codes and standards?
Because this is primarily for manufactured homes. Manufactured homes by definition follows HUD requirements, which are federal requirements and do not follow local codes and standards. A lot of them may be dated, so the codes and standards may not even be consistent or up to par with the current codes and standards that we recognize here in Hawaii. Not just the plumbing code, but the electrical code, the building code, the residential code, the IEC, energy efficiency code, I mean, every single code in Chapter 107-25.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, follow up.
Yes, Senator Inouye.
Thank you, and thanks for being here as well. What happens, there are manufactured homes that are built here in Hawaii. And as an example, HPM does sort of manufactured homes, but it's all built in Hawaii and using the, I guess, all of the wood that they import, no different than ordinary developers would build, so. But are we saying that any manufactured home, whether it's built here in Hawaii, does not apply to the standards of HUD's regulations, or?
Thanks for that question, Senator. So the difference between a manufactured home and what you're referring to is a modular home, which we actually support.
Okay.
And what was supported in Bill 15 that we supported on Maui to help address the concerns of the Lahaina victims. Modular homes are required to follow local codes and standards. And we've been working with local vendors here to keep the economy here, built by local contractors according to local contracting law, according to local building codes and standards, and still address the issues of providing alternate housing options. And we believe that if we, I mean, part of the reason we don't support this particular measure because it circumvents, in our opinion, it preempts the work done by the Speed Task Force, which called for other recommendations to take a closer look and involve all the stakeholders to look at off-site construction, which part of the discussion would be modular homes, keeping the work here, keeping the local workforce here, keeping the economy here, rather than exporting it out of state. Those kinds of, I don't think this bill contemplates the potential long-term impacts that bills like this would have on our apprenticeship programs when we start to lose the apprenticeship hours that our apprentices are licensed to, which could have long-term impacts to our workforce pipeline when we try to address some of the ebbs and flows in construction, which would result in us having to import labor from other states to address those increases in construction activity. So all we're asking is to hold or defer this measure so that we can look at other bills that are asking to discuss these important issues that could have a tremendous consequential impact on the construction industry in the future. And again, we believe that the homes, local vendors like HPM and others that are contemplating creating a facility here are viable options that we can consider. And we feel that they might be able to handle the demand. And if we can't, then we can take a look at expanding it to outside of the state. But I think we should try at first to keep it within our state, keep the economic viability here, keep the workforce here, and make sure that it's done according to our codes and standards, which are very different from the HUD standards.
Okay, and I think I missed a little about what's happened on Maui and Lahaina. Is it my understanding then modular manufactured homes were brought in, just for our information?
So Bill 15 was a compromise, and it was unanimously supported by the Maui County Council. And what it did is it allows local vendors on the Big Island to work with Maui County and have a reciprocal agreement where it's built and inspected on the Big Island by Big Island inspectors, but inspected to Maui code. So there's a reciprocal agreement that the two counties are gonna work on and have the units built, the modular units, not manufactured, modular units built according to local code and standards by local contractors, licensed contractors, and then shipped over to Maui. That's what the Bill 15 allowed.
Okay, prior to that, that came out of the county council, but were any manufactured homes delivered to Maui County?
Yes.
Okay.
And just for the record, some of those units were not up to code and were not safe and had to be retrofitted. As an example, not to get too technical, but under your sinks, there's a P-trap. There's a reason for that P-trap. And if some of you had tried to do a DIY and change the P-trap and the water falls in your face and you get all upset, there's a reason for that water to be there. It's to prevent toxic gases from entering the living space. So some of these units that were manufactured came in with S-traps. So if you can imagine what an S-trap looks at, it allows the air to flow right through into the living space. And these are wastewater, toxic fumes that are allowed to enter into the living space. Some of these manufactured homes came in with S-traps from foreign countries or wherever they came from, but they had to be retrofitted in order to meet our code. Our basic goal here is to try to achieve as much cost savings and expedience as possible in creating housing opportunities, but not at the expense of public health, safety, and welfare. And there is no value that we can place on one life. And I can give you examples of where these kinds of situations occurred in other countries where they did not follow proper codes and standards, specifically to plumbing systems.
Okay. With that said, those that had bought the manufactured homes, for those living in Lahaina, has there been complaints or they have been sold, right?
I don't know if they've been sold.
Or were they used just for temporary housing ordered by Maui County?
I couldn't answer that
Okay.
specifically, Senator, and my apologies.
Okay, now you did say that with those homes coming out of Hawaii County, and you're talking about Maui County's code, don't we have a state building code that conforms to our state standards? So do we have a Maui County just having their standard codes differ? I'm not sure if that's...
No, I appreciate that question, Senator. So the way 107 is set up is once the codes are published by the various code publishers, and there's at least 3 different ones, right? IAMO publishes the Uniform Plumbing Code, which after it's published, the State Building Code Council, when it was active, had 2 years to review, adopt, or amend the code. And at 2 years, if there was no amendments, the code was adopted as published. From that point, the counties have another 2 years to review the state codes that were adopted by the Building Code Council, to review it and amend it to fit the county-specific needs, whether they're
That was my
geographical.
understanding.
Yes. So the counties may have some variances of the state building code.
All right, thank you.
Any further
Thank you
questions?
for being
Thank you.
here. Appreciate it.
Yes. Senator Decourt.
Department of Health, please. Hi. In a case like this, who would be responsible for like a sewage leak or those kinds of health risks? Would that just be on the owner?
Okay, again, for the record, Kevin Ihu from the Department of Health. Yes, and that's where most of our concerns are, that when you take it away from the counties or the utilities and you put it more on a smaller the smaller scale you get, the more you put it on the homeowner. Yeah, the responsibility would be on the homeowner, and that kind of is where our comments are about the sewer, the wastewater treatment. Yeah.
So have you found many cases where you're struggling with the owner to hold them accountable? I don't know if that accumulates into multiple fines or what something like that looks like.
So we haven't, the best example, and I hate to bring it up, but the best example is like cesspools. Right? That's the best examples. We don't regulate, the Department of Health regulates utilities, regulates the bigger scale. We don't regulate the individual homeowner. So it'll take, like, say a cesspool, it'll take a significant spill or a significant event that would create a health hazard and a complaint that comes in, and then the Department of Health would go and investigate. Yeah, so we don't regulate at the individual homeowner level. So in other words, we won't follow up that you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. That's not the department. We don't go down to that.
Who would that be? Would that be DPP?
Well, so that's why most of the utilities are municipal, and that's why most of the utilities are centralized. And that's why, so like even, so for example, like I'll bring up Hawai'i Electric. Like a lot of people are putting PV up now. So what you don't realize is that you're actually taking the responsibility of that electrical utility, you as the homeowner, but you hire somebody. Right? You're not going to go up there and wipe it or maintain the PV, you hire somebody. So in this case, you would have to hire somebody for whatever utility that you're taking the responsibility for. But in essence, you're taking the responsibility for. So when we regulate, say the sewer utility, we regulate the sewer, whoever is the owner of that sewer utility operator. We have our regulations in place. Yeah, certified operators. To put that type of requirements down at the homeowner level is not practical for the homeowner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Any further questions? If not, Kika, I have a couple of questions. I understand what this bill is trying to get at, right? You get at the cost of housing in Hawaii to give people cheaper options. Not everybody can afford a brick and mortar home. Someone might want to be looking at a modular, prefab, manufactured, whatever type of home that is put together primarily on the mainland. But I know you come at it from a standpoint like, no, we're just going to shut down this option for the public. And I'm trying to find, like, there has to be a happy medium here. We should be giving the public an option, but I understand safety is a concern. But your testimony makes it sound like all of these things that are manufactured outside of Hawaii are all going to be substandard. But there's clear language in this bill that talks about how the county level, the house can be rejected if it doesn't comply with applicable building code. So isn't there enough safeguards here to allow for a safe home to be brought in from outside rather than just say point blank, no, we're not going to allow any of these into our state?
Okay, so first of all, Senator, thank you for that question. We're not saying no, we don't want to allow any of this into our state. What we're saying is this bill is premature because we haven't gone through the process that the Speed Task Force recommended, which is let's have a larger discussion with all the stakeholders about this. Modular homes, which is what we support, versus manufactured homes, which is what we have concerns with. There is again, manufactured homes, which is contemplated in this bill, by definition, follows HUD requirements, which circumvents state and local building codes standards. So I don't believe that these homes manufactured homes would be subject to local or state standards. They are preempted by federal standards. And again, you know, we understand that there's a lot of attention being given to overregulation, but the primary purpose, and it's in section 101.3 of at least the plumbing code, and I know it's in pretty much every building code that I can think of, the primary intent of the building codes is to protect public health, safety, and welfare. If that is the consequence of that regulation, then I think it's a good consequence to have. Because when we talk about resilience, when we talk about disasters that we just faced, when we talk about what happened in Lahaina, we always talk about resilience after the fact. What we're saying is we got to have that discussion before the disaster occurs. And if we start to eliminate these types of regulations that specifically protect public health, safety, and welfare, then we're not providing resilient homes and dwellings for our residents. And so we're not saying we're opposed to it. We're saying let's have the discussion first. There are other bills that are moving through the legislature that create those opportunities so that everybody, all stakeholders can weigh in. My understanding is that this bill was drafted pretty much independently. There was no input from stakeholders that I can think of, nobody from the construction industry, nobody from the licensed trades, the electricians or the plumbers that I can think of. Nobody asked for our opinion on these types of manufactured homes. And I do want to say that although we're the only construction trade that submitted testimony, there are other construction trades that share our view. They just haven't been able to come down and testify to that fact. So we're not saying we're opposed to it. We're saying let's have the discussion and let's hold this because we don't believe that all of the potential impacts have been thought out or thought through. And I think the benefits, the small benefits that you might realize through this bill are going to be far outweighed by the potential consequences that this bill could cause. And there are counties that I understand do not support relocatable. So this is a one-size-fits-all. It grants property owners by right to have these types of units. It bypasses county home rule, something that we don't support. And so for those reasons, Senator, again, we're not opposed to it, but we think that the discussion should occur before these types of broad sweeping consequential policies are passed.
Now, I understand that the carpenters union is actually okay with this bill. And you mentioned how you're the only union that is out against this bill. And I kind of don't buy the fact that somehow they haven't been paying attention for the two previous hearings that it's been in front of. And the fact that this is probably the third committee that's heard this bill and they're nowhere to be found. The only trade union is you, means that seems like everybody else except the plumbers are okay with this bill.
Well, Senator, with all due respect, I mean, the carpenters are the only ones that came out in support of it. So where are the other ones in support? I can tell you, and I didn't want to mention by name, but I have talked with the IBW 1186, and they share our concerns. They gave me their permission to mention it. I didn't want to mention it, but since you bring it up, I'll mention it.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any further questions? If not, we're going to take a brief recess prior to the vote. Oh, actually, you're in charge.
We're reconvening the joint committees on energy and intergovernmental affairs, housing, water, land, culture, and the arts on our 3:01 p.m. agenda for decision-making on several bills, beginning with HB 1738, HD2 relating to land use decision-making. As much as we have discussion and would like and probably need to move something forward, there are not the votes in support on this, so we'll be deferring this measure at this time.
Same for EIG.
And Housing Committee will also defer this measure.
Moving on to SB 1739 relating to transit-oriented development, be the same recommendation. We'll be deferring this measure.
Same for EIG.
And the Housing Committee will also defer this measure.
And for the last bearer of bad news, for House Bill 1742, the recommendation is to defer this measure as well.
The Housing Committee will also defer this measure.
And with,
No, no.
oh, I'm sorry, same recommendation for Waterland.
Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you for your patience. We're convening the joint hearing between the Committee on Energy and Intergovernmental Affairs and our good friends from the Committee on Housing on this March 19th, shortly after 3:02 in Capitol Room number 224. We have two items, actually, no, I'm sorry, four items on this agenda. The first is House Bill 1721 HD2 relating to housing. On our testifiers list, we have Perry Arrowsmith from Housing Hawaii's Future. Thank you, Richmond. Charles Jury from the American Council of Engineering Companies might be joining us via Zoom.
Actually, Chair, it's Janice Marsters here to testify for the American Council of Engineering Companies
Welcome.
of Hawaii. This bill has a number of amendments that were made in the hearing on that created HD2. They were proposed by the American Institute of Architects and additional comments from our professional liability insurance companies. We agree with those amendments. We just note, and I want to explain further a little bit in our testimony, that there remains a typographical error that was actually in Act 295 and continues to get passed forward that should be changed. And that is the reference to naming the state and the county as additional insurers. That should be an additional insureds. That's on page 3 of HD2, line 2. And I just want to explain that a little bit. It's
Janice, we got your testimony, and the members understand that. Your time is
okay.
up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Janice.
And just one other comment.
Janice, we have a very full agenda. We need to
All
move
right,
on.
thank you.
I understand your testimony. Kiko Bukowski, Plumbers.
Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. The plumbers, we support expediting the issuance of permits. The issue that we have with this bill, and there were amendments made to its companion Senate Bill 2378 in CPN that included language that addressed our concerns that in order to get a certificate of occupancy, you have to go through the proper inspections to ensure that the dwelling is safe to occupy. This bill removes that requirement and makes inspections for occupancy voluntary, and basically certificate of occupancy is automatic upon completion of construction. Our amendments are just asking to replace these proposed amendments to ensure that these homes are safe to occupy. In the Housing Committee in the House did not move this measure out with those amendments, and we're asking for the Senate to place those amendments back in. There's a difference between, and I did have a chance to speak with the AIA.
Can you summarize?
I can summarize, sir. And thank you, Chair. We're trying to support this bill by, in our opinion, we're not affecting the ability to expedite permits. We're just saying before you issue a certificate of occupancy, which certifies that this home is safe to dwell in, to occupy, that you have the proper building inspections to ensure that everything that was built, as built, was to design. And there is a distinct difference between the two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kiko. Ted Kafalis from Grassroots Institute. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1721? Sandy?
Thank you, Chair Wakai and Chair Chang. So this is Sandy Wong. I actually represent
ACEC Hawaii, but I'm here on my personal. I just wanted to emphasize that this bill is really a clarification bill. So the engineers support Act 295. However, as written as Act 295, the engineers cannot get insurance. And so the engineers would like to participate, but we need to tweak the bill a little so that they're able to get insurance. And so to actually make Act 295 that you passed last session a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1721? If not, members, any questions of those who are here or online? Okay. We're going to move on to the next measure, that being House Bill 1741, HD2 relating to housing. On our testifiers list via Zoom, Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Aloha mai kako. This is Deja Ostrowski for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. OHA is submitting comments that we caution against the legislature, basically getting rid of the tool that our counties have to require affordable housing as part of development when, for example, a hotel or a luxury developer comes in and builds a hotel. This is government at work. These are the regulations that our counties use every single day to make sure that when we have development, there are affordable housing set-asides. This bill is premised on the false theory that if we have more housing, simply more housing, it will trickle down. And so OHA is offering caution that if we want to make sure that we have more Hawaiians in Hawaii, that we are giving the counties the regulatory tools they have to make sure that we have affordable housing. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mrs. Ostrowski. Housing Hawaii's Future, Lee Wang. Thank you, Richmond. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1741? If not, members, any questions? We're going to move to the third bill on this agenda. That is Bill number 1799, relating to the counties. On our testifiers list, we have Office of Hawaiian Affairs via Zoom.
Aloha Chair and members of the committee, Deja Ostrowski for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs opposes this measure. We believe that streamlining regulatory processes are a subsidy given to the appropriate public purpose. This bill would actually expand the demonstration projects for the counties, not just for affordable housing, but for commercial use. We caution against using this demonstration approach. I think many testifiers have mentioned on other bills, there is the speed task force that is looking into what are the regulations that can be adopted, and we would support those speed task force regulations, not this expansion to commercial use. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. Ostrowski. Gavin Thornton from the Department of Housing on Maui, City and County of Honolulu.
We'll stand on our written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. Perry Arrowsmith from the Housing Hawaii's Future. Thank you. And Gino Sequena from the Hawaii Building and Construction Trades Council has submitted testimony opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1799?
Pick up my glasses too. Chair, Vice Chair, Kiko Bukowski on behalf of the Plumbers and Fitters Local 675. We did not submit written testimony on this measure, but we would like to voice our opposition. We share the same concerns that OHA has shared here, and we want to note that, the first, this act, I think it was first adopted in 1970, and there was a clear purpose to support housing. But in this bill, it basically says to support commercial development. So we don't know if that's a clear public benefit to have this type of broad sweeping bill that exempts these types of large commercial projects from all state laws, all ordinances, and again, all building standards, which includes permitting and building codes and standards. Thank you.
Kiko. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1799? If not, we're going to pass it on to my illustrious co-chair for the last measure.
Thank you. To my Ian Moore, illustrious co-chair.
Oh, wow.
HB 1718, relating to housing, repeals the sunset date of Act 45 SLH 2024, thereby making permanent the authority of the counties to share in facilitating the development, construction, financing, refinancing, or other provision of mixed-use developments, including low and moderate income housing projects, and issue county bonds for this purpose. First testifier is HHFTC in support, followed by OPSD in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, Chairs, Vice Chairs, members of the committee. Diana Ennis with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. OPSD stands on written testimony and support. Available for any questions.
Thank you. Department of Housing and Land Management, City and County of Honolulu in support.
Stand on our written testimony and strong support, but happy to provide additional details.
Thank you. Housing Hawaii's Future in support. AARP Hawaii in support. Leading Age Pacific West in opposition. And Maui County Council Chair Alice Lee in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 1718? Okay, if not, do we have any questions? Vice Chair Hashimoto.
City? So I guess instead of outright repeal on your sunset, because my understanding is you can't use this at the current moment because of the sunset.
Correct. It's a little bit of a complex legal question, but yeah, that's our concern. So, by the way, for the record, Gavin Thornton, Housing Policy Director at the City and County of Honolulu in the Department of Housing and Land Management. So, if I can just maybe provide a overview real quickly. So, pre-Act 45, all the city could do was issue bonds to build just low-income housing units. This allows us to move past that outdated model that we don't like concentrated public housing essentially, and move to being able to create more diverse communities that include commercial, like retail, so you can have livable, walkable communities that people actually want to live in. And for one, I don't really understand the purpose of the sunset in the first place. It wasn't in the legislative history, and I don't know why you'd want to go back to an outdated model that we know doesn't work. The problem with doing that is that we provided in our testimony an example of EIG-WLA Center by a rail station where we want to do mixed-use development, really important to develop walkable communities. We might be able to do a project, but it shouldn't stop there. Like that entire community needs to be developed.
Okay, so with the sunset, if we do figure out, okay, because at the end of the day, we have to figure out how to get this passed. I think there's merit in it, but I think there's different parameters we have to figure out. So do you know off the top of your head, if we put in a provision that just allows you to float bonds before a sunset and not prohibit the continued expenditure of those bond proceeds, would that be helpful, or was that something that you'd have to go back and check with your bond counsel?
Yeah, I probably need to check with bond counsel on exact language.
Because essentially what the intent is that you can float any type of bonds up to the sunset date, and then you don't have to worry whatever is floated. But I think my understanding of the sunset was we just wanted to see if you could do anything in a particular time period. Because if you don't do anything, then then just let it sunset, right? But I understand what the challenges are, because if you can't use it because of the way that it was written. So maybe if we can help you get to that point where we can fix it.
Yeah.
Then we just need to understand what is the correction that you need to make this a useful tool.
We're absolutely going to use it. Is there a concern that it's not going to work well, or I apologize. I did review the legislative history to try and understand what the concerns were behind the sunset. Okay. It just doesn't make sense to me. It feels kind of like, when should we go back to bloodletting? That just doesn't work. And building just islands of low-income housing like, isn't a good model. And I think we've experienced that. And I don't think we ever want to do that again. I think we want to build like livable, walkable communities. EIG-WLA is one place. Cities identified 11 city-owned parcels where they'd like to develop housing.
Got it. I don't disagree with the merits. It's just we're just trying to figure
Okay.
out what can we do with this bill. So maybe you can give us some advice from bond council and
Okay,
we can kind
I'd
of
be
go
happy
from
to.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Senator Quinn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you was, so in addition to the Kuili Skyline Station, are there any other projects that may be negatively affected if the sunset date in Act 45 is not changed?
Yes, so the former Delight Bakery site in Kalihi is another example, close to another rail station. 130 South Beretania Street is another example. And I apologize that I can't rattle off the top of my head the other
So
sites.
130 South Beretania, what, like, was it, there's some McDonald's or Zippy's or like, so to kind of get an idea of 130 South Beretania?
I apologize that I don't know the details of that.
And you work for the city and county?
I do.
Okay, thank you, thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Senator Favela.
So since this program has been active since 2024, how many mixed-use units have actually been funded, completed, and used the specific county bonds that was authority?
0, because it takes a very long time to put together a housing project like this.
So since 2024, how much is on the books that started? You started in 2024. What are you starting to get to that? I understand you said there's a long process,
Yeah.
but did you start anything since 2024?
So my department was just created last year. The city had gone without a housing department with centralized housing functions for 30 years. We were created because the city hasn't really been in the business of developing housing. That just happened as of May 2025. We have identified 11 city parcels for development. We've identified development partners for at least 8 of those parcels. For the EIG-WLA Center project, we identified EAH Housing as the development partner there. We have gotten a $2 million grant from the $2 million federal grant to do the station area master planning effort. So there's been a lot of progress and a lot of work underway, but the bottom line is any kind of large-scale development process like this takes multiple years to make it happen. And that is why the sunset is so problematic, is the time frame. Even a 5-year time frame is a short time frame to get anything of this scale done.
So what, for your opinion, since you brought that up, what is you think you're gonna need? Because if we have a 10-year, 15-year, you're not gonna be there.
I mean, we'd be able to build a project, maybe 2.
No, but you're not gonna be there. The reason why I'm saying this is that I understand you guys have a problem with the sunset, but the administration which you stay with is gonna be gone.
Oh,
The
right.
previous administration will come in, and again, we'll continue to kick this can down the road, and we're not gonna get nothing done because you just started, happened in 2024, we just created your department. But what is the reassurance that we're gonna be able to actually get this off the ground? You're already saying that you don't like the sunset date, so then what it is gonna be for the community and the mixed-use population that needs the housing?
Sure. I mean, that's a very valid point. We are sprinting as fast as we can. We have 3 years. We
Is it
know that.
forward or reverse?
Yes, sprinting
Okay, sorry,
forward.
okay, just
Yeah,
checking.
Mahalo.
Okay, thank you, Chair, appreciate it.
Further questions, members? Okay, if not.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Brief recess. Thank you for your patience. We're reconvening the joint committee with the Committee on Energy and Intergovernmental Affairs and our friends from the Committee on Housing. On this agenda, this 302 agenda, House Bill 1721 HD2 relating to housing. I want to make two substantive changes, taking into account the suggestion by the American Council of Engineering Companies of Hawaii. Just a small, like one word letter change from insures to insured, which will open up opportunities for insurance companies to be partners in the build out of housing. We're also going to take the plumber's suggested amendment of being part of the inspection process. So those are the two suggested amendments. Any discussion? If not, Senator Chang, I vote yes.
Chair's recommendation for House Bill 1721 is to pass with amendments. Chair votes yes. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator DeCoy.
Aye.
Senator Richards.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Recommendation is adopted. And for the Committee on Housing, same recommendation to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Members, HB 1721 HD2, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Elefante.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes. Senator Favela.
Here,
Oh,
aye.
aye. Chair recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
On the next measure, that is 1741 HD2 relating to housing. Had a lot of discussion on this. I know this doesn't sit well with everybody, but I think that it still will have a positive effect on housing. So I'd like to recommend that we pass this measure out as is. Any discussion? If not, Senator Chang, I vote yes.
Noting the presence of all members, Chair's recommendation for HB 1741 is to pass unamended. Are there any objections or reservations?
Reservations. No vote for me.
A no for Senator Favela and
No.
no votes for Senator DeCoit and Favela and reservations for Senator Richards. Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
And for the Committee on Housing, same recommendation to pass unamended for House Bill 1741.
Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Elefante.
No.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Oh.
Chair recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
On House Bill 1799 HD2 relating to the counties, the chairs have conferred, and we would like to defer action on this measure.
The Committee on Housing defers House Bill 1799. And for House Bill 1718, the last bill on the agenda, we need a little bit more time to get clarity on some wording changes. So Committee on Housing will be deferring decision-making until Tuesday, March 24th at 1:06 p.m. in room 225.
For EIG, same recommendation that we will defer action until Tuesday, March 24th in this room 224 at 3:02. And with no further business, we're adjourned. Thank you for your patience. We are convening the Committee on Energy and Intergovernmental Affairs on this Thursday, March 19th, shortly after 3:03 in room 224. We have one bill on this agenda, that is House Bill 1667 HD1 relating to civil identification. And on our testifiers list, we have Ed Sniffen or someone from DOT via Zoom.
Not present on Zoom, Chair.
Okay, we have Judith Clark, who might also be joining us via Zoom.
Aloha, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Judith Clark, a community advocate who coordinated a statewide homeless youth partnership for 25 years and a person with lived experience of youth homelessness. I strongly support this bill. The lack of official government identification is a major barrier for homeless youth in accessing services. Unaccompanied homeless minors do not have a parent or guardian to sign consent for them. Unsafe home conditions and family abuse are the most common reasons why young people need to leave home. Lowering the age at which minors can obtain a state identification card without parental signature will facilitate access to housing, education, health, and social services to homeless young people. For youth who are immigrants, COFA migrants, or persons who may be mistakenly targeted by immigration enforcement, having
Judy,
legal
sorry,
identification provides a protection from
your time is
detention
up.
or arrest. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, we have less than 2 minutes before we have to vote.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of this committee. My name is Justice Kyle Castroverde Moniz. I'm a second-year law student, and it's my first time providing testimony. I'm here on behalf of Opportunity for Youth Action Hawaii, and we strongly support this bill. I just have one quick thing. This bill is an opportunity to reduce barriers for youth making the transition into adulthood, particularly for youth. Barriers are stacked higher, substantially higher for those experiencing homelessness. As the previous testifier just stated, these people may not have the opportunity to get parental signatures. Passing this bill will allow them to have a chance to transition into adulthood a little bit more smoothly. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Mr. Moniz. Is there anyone
Sorry.
else wishing to testify? And then Mr. Moniz, Senator Favela, we have 1 minute.
Okay, I understand the urgency because we like talk about a houseless population, but I work with the houseless population very much in my community, and none of them have any problems in not getting any kind of obtain on social services and moving forward. I look at this bill as, again, seeing that with the immigration and they're afraid they won't get arrested and all of that kind of stuff. That shouldn't be the combination of using our houseless population to being the one that's saying that, oh, we'll help them get transition into adulthood. 16, 17, 18, even up to 19. These kinds of decisions that they're gonna take away the parental rights, even though the parent's not around, is still yet circumventing the whole thing about them never is adult at 16. When I was 16 years old, I wasn't making decisions whether I'm on the street or not on my own. 16 years old, a lot of people is trying to change the whole transition. 16 is not ready to be an adult, not even an 18-year-old. So again, we're gonna bypass the parental kind. That's the problem I have. Taking away the parental guidance, because they might not have parents. But again, that's not come true with majority of the houseless individuals that we work with in our community when it comes to underage homelessness, in getting the programs and the ID that they need. And I'm sorry, Chair, I'll just end it with that.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you for coming, Mr. Moniz. He just wanted to share his 1 hour with you. Okay, we're going to move into decision-making. The recommendation with this measure is to pass with the amendment. The amendment was the suggestion by the City and County of Honolulu that we delay by 1 year the bill's approval so that they can get all their ducks lined up and fully implement this program. Any discussion? If not, Senator Chang, I vote yes.
Chair's recommendation for House Bill 1667 is to pass with amendments. Chair votes yes, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Coit? Senator Richards?
Aye.
Senator Favela?
No.
Recommendation is adopted.
Great, thank you. We're adjourned.